Toronto is undertaking one of the world's largest rail modernization projects, which we probably wouldn't have to undertake if we had just gone on with modernizing things a bit faster, but I digress. In the last 10 years, the GO Transit commuter rail system has become the GO Transit regional rail system. 10 years ago, most lines didn't run all day. It was in the morning and out in the evening. But now, 5 out of the 7 lines have all-day service. That allows people to go to a concert downtown in the evening, go to a suburban festival in the morning, or go for a day trip on the weekend. But now that the trains are so good and don't need to be replaced in the middle of the day by buses, and are obviously only getting better, does GO really have a good reason to keep its hundreds of buses kicking around? Yes, and the answer isn't actually quite so simple. So let's talk about trains and buses and how they complement one another. Oh, and there's also going to be a map, an epic map. So make sure you stay around for that. My name is Reece and I run RMTransit, a channel about transit networks and how they evolve. GO Expansion, the project to transform the GO train system into something more like a regional rapid transit system, is great. But what it means is that a whole lot of people ask me on a regular basis if it's time to ditch the costly diesel-powered buses and focus on electric trains. And I decided that instead of continuing to answer that question, it would be better for me to make a video where I talk about all the reasons we should keep the GO Transit buses, even if it's tempting for our politicians to ditch them. The first big reason we can't just ditch all of the GO buses is because the entire GO train system isn't getting the regional rapid transit treatment, even if in the long term it should. It seems like the plans for the Richmond Hill and Milton line are still going to have them having pretty bad service at the end of the current round of improvements. And not every section of the current network is going to be frequent and all day as well, such as the northern end of the Stouffville line and the Niagara end of the Lakeshore West line. GO buses are also really important for regional connections. The reality is that the buses connect a lot of destinations that are near but not on a current train line, but which want and need to be on the regional transit network. GO buses connect a crazy number of colleges and universities across southern Ontario, as well as towns and villages that aren't on the current train or local transit network. And I honestly think that these routes have a lot of potential for growth. Even if the towns, villages, and universities weren't growing, which they typically are, people living in the city who don't have a car need a way to get off the beaten path to these smaller places, and the GO buses can provide that connection. On the other hand, since Metrolinx has buses, it's actually able to make use of some of the BRT infrastructure it's funded for local transit operators, such as the Mississauga Transitway in Mississauga. At the same time, since Metrolinx is investing a lot in new BRT projects, including 2 projects to the west and east of Toronto paralleling the Lakeshore GO line, known as the Dundas and Durham-Scarborough BRTs, not to mention all of the Viva BRTs that have already been built, it's actually just kind of nice to have Metrolinx with its own buses it can operate along these corridors if it chooses to do so. And that can be for things like running Super Express BRT services along these busy corridors, or even just using them for last mile connections off of highways and to GO stations. Something I've really noticed in the UK and Germany while I've been here is how much train service runs really late or even overnight. And while I'm not sure that Toronto and Canada is going to get to that level of overnight rail service anytime soon, it would probably be good to consider implementing Night Up Express and Night Go services, where buses replace trains for the overnight period. Since these are strong transit corridors, they have demand all times of day and night. Since some GO bus routes basically already run 24/7, I can't see a good reason not to consider, say, implementing a 24-hour service on the busy Lakeshore corridor and a 24-hour service connecting Pearson Airport to Union Station. 24-hour destinations if I've ever seen them. And destinations that are painful to get to at the shoulders of the current service. For example, if you have a really early flight at Pearson, it's hard to get there, and Up Express service ends really early. What's also really nice is that since the traffic tends to be pretty light at 2 AM, buses can reasonably replace trains on these services. And even better, by providing transit service at all times of day, we help strengthen these very important corridors and encourage even more density than we're already seeing. And best of all, we can use the lovely new Union Station bus terminal, which isn't all that busy overnight. It's also worth pointing out through all of this that Go already runs a lot of bus services that aren't just replacements for train services, including buses on the 401 and 407 highways, which are actually really popular, and that's not slowing down. Metrolinx actually has plans for what it calls Regional Express Bus, which would be a coherent network of express Go bus routes which run around the GTHA and connect various destinations, including Go and subway lines, local express bus routes, major destinations, and outlying towns and cities. This glorious map, which was snuck into a business case for a Go station fairly recently, shows why this would be an incredibly good thing to implement. The loop, so to speak, formed by highways 407, 404, 401, and 427 surrounds a ton of major destinations, including 2 major colleges, 4 subway stations once the extension to Richmond Hill is completed, as well as Pearson Airport. Wings heading off the 407 and 401 bits of this loop could connect to Bramalea and Unionville Go, as well as Square One, Mississauga City Centre, and the Huron-Ontario LRT, and even further along Aldershot and Pickering Go stations. I think this map deserves special praise because, like say the Tube map in London, it takes a network of destinations that aren't so easy to visualize and makes it perfectly legible how a network could connect them up. And by doing that, it makes the case beautifully for connecting them. This network of destinations is not easy to serve with rail. You can't exactly draw 1 or even 2 lines that connect them all up. But it's actually a perfectly practical network of destinations to connect up with buses. You could have routes starting in the west, traveling up along the 407 and 401, as well as separate routes that cut between the different highways, and potentially even one that loops between North Toronto and Southern York region, which would be really cool. People love loops. I actually think that running a number of specially branded regional express bus services along these corridors would bring a ton of value, and because of this lovely map, it would be pretty easy to sell to politicians and the public. And if we want this to be really nice, we need to be pushing for better bus terminals, direct links onto and off of the highways, as well as electric buses, and most importantly, dedicated bus lanes across the entire GTHA highway network. It's an obvious thing to do. Obviously, we should have bus lanes all over the place in a big city like Toronto, but I'm sure the fact that we don't doesn't surprise anyone. I, for one, propose that we buy tickets to Seoul for a wide range of MTO officials and GTHA politicians so they can go to a city that has crazy BRT, see how many people we could be moving if we just had bus lanes on highways and major roadways, and then hopefully start implementing that stuff over in Canada. Nonetheless, I hope you can see that better Go trains aren't going to make Go buses redundant. It's actually going to open up the buses to do far more important things than replace train services that can't run because the trains are parked. Thanks for watching.